All right, welcome. So today is Thursday, March 21st, and we are painting sunrise and sunshine. Um, a lot of the colors for the inspiration and composition are really just bright and warming and really more so positive than anything else. And sometimes we all just need a little boost of positivity in our day. So this is where we're going to practice a few different techniques tonight. We're not doing any detailed trees or no animals, but we're going to practice really blending and smoothing colors together tonight. So we'll be slowing down and playing with how we can create some really soft, beautiful transitions from one layer to another. And maybe we'll try to not use a ton of water up front. Maybe we'll just try to use paint. And then the other things that we'll be doing tonight in our class is we'll be having some fun with some really delicate cloud techniques and cloud detail work to see what we can create there. And then our third final step is doing some really soft overlays of like a sun glow on top. So there's some really fun different things that we'll do here together. I'm not sure how long it will take us, so we could probably go as slow or as fast here as we want, but we'll just kind of go at our own pace. But I'm so glad that you're here. We have Miss Sharon here for the live class. A few others couldn't make it. And we have lots of folks that will be listening to this recording after. So if you have any questions or have any needs throughout this live class, Sharon, don't hesitate to chime in. And then for anyone that's listening to the recording, I encourage you to comment below either in the Patreon space or within YouTube. And I'm happy to get back to you with any questions. So a few of the supplies that I have, the traditional brushes that I use for these classes are like a 1/2-inch flat tip brush for coverage, and then some of these smaller detailed brushes. Use whatever you have. I also grabbed a couple other quote unquote larger brushes. These I'm going to use for like dry brushes to really go back and forth to blend in colors that I'm not going to put any paint on, but I'm going to use to kind of stretch over one color to another. So grab if you have any extra brushes, like bigger style. If they're bigger than this, that works too. I was trying to find some larger sizes and I couldn't. So I might look again here in a minute. But feel free to grab bigger ones if you have bigger ones than this. I am painting on 11 by 14 canvas paper tonight. I have a palette paper next to me over here. It's like a waxy paper. It comes in a pad. This is what I'm using to mix my colors on. If you don't have palette paper at home, you can use like a paper plate or any other plate to mix colors. And I'll be mixing colors right here in plain sight so you can see what we're doing. And then I have an array of acrylic paints in front of me. I have blue, yellow, red, black and white, green, and teal. But we'll be mixing kind of our own colors along the way. Now, if we look at the inspiration, which I have dropped into the chat, and if you also need to reference the inspiration, it's listed right within the YouTube video. It's also listed within Patreon. It really has a beautiful blue, light blue sky on the top, and then it kind of fades down to like a nice orange. So we're going to start with the light blue at the top. We're going to fade down to the orange for some of our base colors. And that'll be really straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and start with just this 1/2-inch flat tip brush. I put some of my bigger brushes up at the top because I'm just not going to need those quite yet. Stick those right there. And I'll bring my palette right here. Actually, I'll just keep it right next door. So I'm going to come up with a light blue. So we're going to start with any blue you have. I'm just going to mix blue and white together. So I'm going to put some blue on my plate. You don't need too much. And if you wanted to choose or change the colors that we're using throughout class, you're absolutely welcome to do that. Sometimes people like purples or reds. You choose what you want in that regard. All right. So I'm going to wet my brush a little bit. And I'm going to bring a little bit of blue down here towards my white. And I'm going to bring my white up towards my blue. So you can see what that does. It allows me to not use all of my white in kind of one sitting, right? And I can pull from the white to make it lighter. And I can pull from my blue to make it darker if I need to. So this is kind of a nice way of practicing on how you mix your paints so you don't waste all of your paint. you sometimes, you may just take a scoop of your blue and just put it in all of your white, then you might have too much, right? So you can kind of use this technique of bringing them together in the middle to stretch your paint as needed. So I want you to find a nice light blue that you like. Take a minute to mix these around. And then we're just going to do some nice, smooth, even brush strokes of the light blue at the top of the page. We're not going to get too fancy yet. We will add some clouds in the top part of the sky. But I'm so glad you're here. So great to see you, Sharon, as always. I'm just going to take a couple of deep breaths. You can figure out how much blue you want to add up here. You can dip your brush in a little bit of water if you wanted to kind of move it around a little bit. I'm not going to do more than 3 or 4 inches of blue up here because I'm going to bring in the orange pretty quickly. So for me, I'm just going for a nice, smooth, light blue. And I'm doing long horizontal brush strokes from the left to the right side of the canvas in a single brush stroke. I'll move this down. And then as you're coming down, I'm going to transition this to a lighter blue. So I'm just going to do a little bit of paint, kind of wipe off some of the paint off my brush. And with a little water, I'm just going to soften the bottom of this. So it just slowly transitions to a really faint blue, because this will help us with our transition for our orange. So play with this blending. We're going to use, I'm using a little water. You can bring this down even 3 or 4 inches. We can put the orange right on top, but the transition between the blue and the orange is something that we'll play with tonight. But this soft layer of blue that I'm adding, you don't need very much paint at all on your brush. And you can go slow, you can go fast. Might grab a little bit more paint. Play with the transition here. This is a little experimental. It's kind of fun to slow down to kind of practice some of these techniques. This is a big part of tonight's class, is to play with the transitions of color. It's one of our themes to practice. I might have like a little bit of like a line situation going on here. That's okay. I'm not worried about that. We're bringing in orange anyways. But you can see I don't have any small, short, stubby brush strokes. I have a paintbrush bristle right here. I'll get right off. But I have long, smooth brush strokes. So you can see I came down quite a bit right here. But that's no problem. It's okay to have it like the little bit of haze. Look and feel. So this is probably, 2 or 3 inches, and this is probably 2 or 3 inches roughly. It's not quite halfway. My halfway for my picture is probably right about here. So I came down quite a bit, but I'm going to cover a lot of this bottom light blue with some orange. So that's drying. I didn't use too much water. It's actually pretty dry to the touch right now. Well, as I stick my finger in it and it makes a mark. And I'm just going to transition whenever you're ready. There's no rush. Let that dry and we're going to make an orange together. And I'm putting the orange, I'm being thoughtful about putting the yellow below the white, because I might use some of that white to make a lighter orange, right? So I might put a little bit of red. It's going to go a long way here. We are going to use more red and we're going to make a more orangey orange down below. So a small drop of red is fine. We will reuse some of this blue, so you can see how little paint we used at the top. And I'm going to just use the same brush, cleaning it off well. I also have a paper towel handy. I've gotten very resourceful in these classes, Sharon, of reusing my paper towels. Because I have a studio space, and if I have like a half clean paper towel, I just leave it right there, right? And I just reuse it. Who cares? You just, and like I reuse these red cups all the time, right? It's like you don't have to, or use glass, glass jars or whatever. So I'm gonna make an orange of choice here. So I'm mixing a little bit of red over here with my yellow. A little red is gonna go a long way. And this is not, I'm not going for like a blood orange yet. I'm going for like a juicy orange color. So you can play with what tone of orange this may be. So if you need it to be a little more orangey, and you're going to want to make quite a bit of this. So I'm going to use more of my yellow here, more than I did of my blue. Yeah, there we go. So I'm making this like orange juice color. And it's a little bright for me. So I'm just going to take a little scoop of the white and I'm just going to mix it in right here in the middle. And I'm just going to lighten it a little bit. I'm going to turn it to a little bit of an orange sherbet color. So if you're new to these classes, we always take the time to like mix the colors, one that we like, and two that it actually kind of follows suit. If we use like bright oranges and bright blues and bright reds, our pictures would all look the same. So it's really important that we kind of find our own tones and colors along the way. So you can see by adding just a little bit of white, it just turns it into this really nice soft color. And I can always darken that again if I need to. But what we're going to do is we're just going to, below this blue area, I'm going to do my orange. And it might look pretty bold at first, but you're going to go all the way off the side of the page. And you're going to do nice smooth brush strokes. And you're just going to start to work your way down. One of the things you can do is you could dip your brush in a little bit of water. And while this paint is still wet, you could slowly bring it up if you wanted to. And this is where we're going to do some new techniques that we'll practice. But we have to move pretty quickly with acrylic since it dries so fast. So I'll grab a little bit more orange paint. I did add some water right here. So we could try this with a little bit of water. We'll see here. But I'm going to grab a little bit of orange paint. And I'm going to quickly grab one of my other brushes that I have, this dry brush. And what you can do is you can slowly start to kind of bring it up just a little bit. You can always put a little bit on here if you wanted to play with this transition. You can kind of do some, you can play with doing some like circular brush strokes, playing how to blend it in. You could play with bringing in a little bit of water. We'll probably bring some blue back on top of this. Sometimes when you mix, and I'm just using a little bit of water on this brush, when you mix blue and orange, sometimes you'll get a little bit of a green look. We'll probably bring some blue on here, but play with using this dry brush. Well, I have a little bit of water on here now, and you can see it's transferred some of the orange, but play with just a little bit of wet. And if you want to try dry, you can. And I'm just slowly playing with the transition of these two layers. And I'm just doing back and forth, back and forth. And you can play with this transition. I'm going to bring some of this brighter orange up a little higher. So use a brush that you're comfortable with. This one actually is really nice. So I'm going to bring a little paint onto it, which is what I just did. But this is for you to experiment. Sometimes using a bigger brush, which for our classes, we don't always use bigger brushes. So maybe we'll do some more of that in the future. But we're going from like a subtle soft orange down to the darker color here. And the darker color will come down to like the bottom third, basically. So I'm gonna just put a line down here. Like the bottom third of your canvas can remain white, because we're gonna put more down there. But this top third here can be your juicy orange, just to show you kind of where we're at. And you might need to mix more paint, that's no big deal. But just take a few minutes for yourself here to experiment with these transitions. I am running out of paint, so I'm just gonna make some more. And again, I'm gonna put a little bit of white in here. And it's okay if you have any, like, if you have transitional layers, like if they're not all the same, that's okay. Use a little water and kind of wipe the water droplets off the top. But see how smooth you can get with your color transitions. That's really what we're playing with tonight. Play with if you need it to be lighter or darker in color, if you need more water or less water or no water at all. These long, smooth brush strokes will help you get there. And I'm going all the way to the left and all the way to the right. And I'll play with the top a little bit more, but we're in no hurry here. It's very experimental. Maybe you bring in a little bit of yellow. Who knows? Play with this. A little bit of a haze, a cloud haze in between these layers. We'll play with that in a minute too, but just play with the blue transitioning to the orange. You can kind of start at the top, do horizontal brush strokes down into the orange, or you can start from the orange and work your way to the top going into the blue. Most of you are probably aware, but don't cover up all your blue. Very important. So I've kind of brought my orange up in a way where it kind of killed my transition a little bit. So I'm just going to work on that for a minute, which is no problem. And sometimes if I don't want to bring my orange up any higher, maybe if I want to bring my blue down, I can clean my brush off and get some blue paint and help the blue paint. If this orange is dry, and you can clean your brush and use a paper towel to see if your brush is clean. But ladies and gents, I can take a little bit of blue paint on my brush and put blue right on top of that orange. As long as the orange is dry, you can bring blue on top of the orange. So it's a part of the process with these classes. It's just knowing to kind of pay attention to where to bring in one layer on top of another, ensuring one is dry. See how I'm bringing the blue and transitioning it over. That helps. You need to kind of check and clean off your brush. Feel free to do that. But these nice, long, smooth, kind of therapeutic brush strokes are just like awesome. And you can see the difference that it makes when you take your time with this smooth transitional layer. And I'd like a little bit of green happening. It's okay. Maybe we'll make like a light purple and we'll add some light purple clouds. That could be kind of fun too. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to play with that. I want you to be happy with the light blue. I want you to be happy with the soft transition. We can probably add in some like purple clouds, and we'll do some thin white clouds at the top too. We're gonna do the only detailed work that we'll do tonight is like we're gonna actually be very intentional of doing very like detailed clouds, which we don't always do. Sometimes we just do like light and fluffy clouds, but we're gonna try to be a little abstract with our clouds tonight, which is gonna be fun. So we want this background to dry. So I'm happy with my light blue. I'm happy with my transition. I'm going to put some more clouds in, maybe some purple haze clouds on top. And I've brought my orange down enough so I can kind of I'm going to put another tier of clouds down here. The other thing that we can do right now that would be helpful for us is painting the bottom. Now this is like a fiery blood orange color, which is going to be so much fun to paint. So if you're still working, feel free to continue working. But if you wanted to paint like a blood orange down here, blood orange is like red and a touch of yellow. So I'm going to mix a blood orange on my palette here. I'm going to make enough of it. And then we'll do a transition between these two. So this is like very red, but I think it's going to give me what I want here. Yeah. And I'm going to see what a little water does. And I have this big brush in my hand, so I didn't put this big brush down. I think it's a little liberating here, Sharon, of having a bigger brush for coverage. But you're going to need to mix more colors along the way. So just take your time and do that. And I'm just kind of going like a fiery blood orange down here. I'm going to mix some more. So yellow and red, way too much yellow. Let's see here. And we just take our time. We're going to do some coverage down here below. And these can kind of connect. They can overlap a little bit. We're going to bring in some really pretty blue clouds in this space, bluish purple clouds on top of like in the midsection of this area. It's going to be really fun. I'm just going to shift some of these papers around here. Okay, there we go. We're just doing like this blood orange coverage down here at the bottom. And you know, to be nice and smooth. If you wanted to, you know, if you wanted to brighten the bottom a little bit, you could, but I'm just going to start with this blood orange color. And then if you like want to add like a little bit of a punchy yellow in the middle, you could. Like, because we're going to put a sun down here on the bottom. So if you wanted to brighten this space with a little yellow, like as an example right here, you could, but we'll focus on just doing the blood orange right now, which is like an orangey red for me, which is really fun. And I'm using this like 1-inch brush, 1-inch flat tip brush. So if you have a big brush, feel free to use it. I'm just going all the way over to the edge. I'm going right up to this orange line. And I'll do like a little bit like of a water transition here, like a little bit of like a couple of brush strokes to kind of help blend one layer to another. But we're not going to rush here. This is going to be a really fun part. So I'm just doing the basic coverage on the bottom first, and then I can play with the blending of the line right here. But dipping your brush in a little bit of water, wiping off those water droplets is really helpful. And then doing some smooth brush strokes. It will really eliminate like where pigment might be stronger in one area or another. If you have any weird lines, a little water and smoothing makes it just a little bit better. But the colors are really pretty. This inspiration. Everybody's loving it so far. We're just doing a whole bunch of colors. We haven't painted anything yet besides our background, which is fine. But that's part of tonight's process, is playing with the blending of colors, playing with the colors that you have, because these colors are what's going to help drive the scene. So it's starting at the base level. It's starting with the background, getting the background in. And then we can add more layering on top. So let's see here. A little bit of a soft transition from one color to another. You can use a really light hand. You can use a heavy hand when you're doing transitionals. You could also use your paper towel to do blending. It's totally up to you. My brush is a little bit wet. I'm just kind of watching the colors kind of go from one to another. Where this orange to red transition is, I'm going to be putting clouds right in this area. So with blues, so it does not need to be perfect because this line is basically going to be covered up with clouds in a minute. And this line for me is just under halfway. So our clouds will be just under halfway. So we're doing two sets of clouds. The blue purple clouds down here on the lower side are going to be just below halfway. We're doing like whiter clouds on the top. So for me, that height works. But we want this to dry. So take a minute to get those base colors in. And Sharon, how's it going over there? Are you taking process photos? I appreciate that.
Yeah, I kind of like the way the background is coming out, so I wanted to capture it before I cover it.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I lost
Terrific.
my mouth, so it took me a minute to unmute.
Yeah, no big deal. So, is your top part dry where your blue is?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, cool. And is your full coverage done? Like your reds and your oranges?
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, that's exactly what I have. Terrific. And I love you have like more or yellowies in the middle, which is really pretty. So
Wasn't
the
paying
next
attention. That's how it came out.
no, I like it. I like it. It's brighter. It's good. It doesn't really matter. So I want everyone to grab a small brush of choice. I'm really grabbing one that has like a nice fine tip on it, or at least a tip that I feel like I can control. Because as artists, we're in control. Imagine that, right? That's what we have to keep telling ourselves as artists. And we are going to do some really thin clouds up here at the top. So these are like line-like clouds. So we're gonna just use white for right now. And then if you want to add any grays, we can. That's no problem. But get a little bit of white paint and kind of pick somewhere, maybe like, towards the bottom of the blue as it's transitioning to the orange. We're going to do a kind of a long, skinny cloud and play with doing the top line of the cloud. This is the top kind of ridge line of the cloud. It can be straight, but I want you to add a little bit of personality to it. So give it some ups and downs. And I want you to come out, a little ways here. So you can kind of come down if you want, but try to make that top look a little, not so, it doesn't have to be round, right? See that? And then I want you to do the bottom. So for me, the bottom is going to be fairly straight. So if you want to start, with a fairly straight bottom, that's fine. But you're gonna do it's gonna be narrow in height. And if you need to hold the brush a little further back, you can. But this left side of the cloud is going to be a little more narrow. So you're going to kind of add a little bit of a tail off into the distance here, into the sky. But I want you to just slow down and play with the top edge. And you can start to just use a little bit of more just white paint on the top side. Keep the bottom of the cloud. Don't fill that in yet. But I gave it a little bit of a bottom, like a line, but don't add too much more there yet. Try to fill in from the top, because what you're going to have you do is use a little water on this brush and gently fill in the cloud using a little water. So it's softer in pigment on the bottom side of the cloud, and it's more white on the top side. So try that. Play with the ridging. Try to make this play with this. And that's gonna, by having the bottom of this cloud have some of that blue and some of that transitional color, it's gonna add shading to the cloud on the bottom more naturally. See that? So you can do the top side of the cloud can be a little whiter, but the bottom side, I'm just using a little bit of water, and I didn't even fill in over here. So that's going to be like one of the bigger clouds up on the top. But if you want to add a couple of other ones, I'm just going to do just a couple of little ones. Same technique. You can even use a little water on your brush. To just give some lighter clouds as well. So experiment here with creating some really soft clouds in the top part of your sky. These are our like lighter clouds. Clean off your brush along the way. If you have too much white paint on it, just clean your brush off. And you can even use a little water and a little bit of white to kind of create some like transitional clouds. You can even like use your finger to kind of smudge, like if you want to have just some lines that like art, and you can kind of smudge with your finger just for some like transitional clouds in the sky. You can barely see them, but I put like a few really thin clouds up here just to like, and I kind of did a little watery line and I smudged it with my finger. Stick a little line and a little smudge. And those are clouds in the far distance. So play with a couple of these clouds. I'm going to bring just a few of these like lined transitional clouds just into this orange space a little bit. So play with that. These are the little details. When you slow down, it's like, wow, these look like clouds from far away and they're so pretty. You can smudge with your finger. You don't have to. I have a little bit of water and a little bit of white going on over here on my palette. You don't need a lot of paint here. The more subtle, the better, in my opinion. But this is all experimental for you to play with. And you can do as much or as little of this as you wish. If you wanted to add more like white hazy clouds, I was talking about adding like a purple tone. You don't have to, but if you wanted to do like a purple tone, we could first mix, I'll mix the purple first just to show you. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of red up here and a little bit of blue. Red and blue will give you purple. And if people don't want to do this, you don't have to. So I'm happy to show you what it looks like first. But I'm happy with the amount of white clouds that I have. That's fine. So I have a dark purple happening, which is exactly what happens when you add blue and red together. To create a lighter purple, you basically add white to it. So for me, I only need a little bit of purple. So I'm just going to put like a little spot of purple right here next to my white. And I'm going to clean off my brush. And I'm going to bring some white over here near the purple. And I'm going to create like a hazy purple color. Like a hazy light purple. So it's like a soft, 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 soft lavender. And I'm gonna put a little bit of water in this. A couple dollops of water to make it really loose. And I'm gonna get a little experimental, but I'm gonna put in a little bit of like purple haze clouds kind of tucked in here. I'm gonna use my finger to smudge it in. I don't know what this is gonna look like, so I'm happy to be the experiment here. But I'm just gonna smudge it in with my finger. You can see it's adding just a little bit of haze. Maybe I'll bring it up over here a little bit. It's kind of playing with like the color of the rainbow effect. You can kind of do some circular smudges with your finger. See that? See how I just created a little bit of this haze? You can even dip your finger in if you want to get really crazy. Dip your finger right in your paint. And I'm just doing some smudging. So you can see it's creating just a little haze here. Totally optional. You don't have to do this, but part of these classes is trying something new. So if you wanted to try this with me, you could. And you could bring this anywhere. But it's just really important that it has water to it, and it's blending in. That's the most important thing. I'm not going to add too much, but you can play with it. You can see it added kind of a nice transitional haze in between the blue and the orange, which for me, I wanted that. So, and if you add a little bit of paint, dip some water on your brush, come in and you can smudge it to create the blending and the transition. So you can always use your finger to blend. Sometimes people use a paper towel to blend. It's very subtle, but you can see there's just a little, you can see where it's wet is where I added it. And I may even take a little bit of this purple and use some of this. I have a little bit of a darker purple right here. I may just put a little bit of shading of this dark purple into some of these clouds up here on the top parts, just adding in a little bit of shading. So sometimes it's fun to bring in a little bit of shading to some objects. Even maybe a little bit on the bottom. Shading will make an object look a little bit more realistic. So you can see I added a little bit of shading up here. If you don't like it, you can kind of smudge it with your finger. You can put white back on top of it. So you can play if you play around if you want to add any of that purple up here into these clouds. You can pick the underside of the cloud, or you can put a little spot. You can see I played with a little bit of the shading here. But in a painting like this, we could spend, a half an hour playing with these clouds. And this is part of, what we're doing tonight. So it's kind of fun. And I'm coming in with a little bit of white to like re-soften it in areas. So this is just a fun way of, we haven't played with clouds in a while, like really with clouds. So you can see what the shading does. And those are just some different techniques. But we're going to transition down to the next set of clouds in just a minute. So everyone take another minute or two. I want you to be happy with the clouds that we have up here. Clean off your brush. I'm going to probably add just like a little bit more of these like whiter style clouds, just a few more. And the white is, if you want to add more white for contrast, you can come in with your paintbrush and just add more white on the tops of the clouds. It will really make those clouds pop and stand out, but just do it on the top edge because the bottom of those clouds are shaded. So just keep that in mind. Okay, awesome. Really fun. Kind of slow down and play with some clouds in that regard. But our world's about to change. We're going to do some blue and purple clouds next. Very similar to what we just did, but they're going to be taller in scale. These are like those big, thick, like voluptuous thunder clouds. That's what we're going to be doing next down below. So I'll keep an eye on the clock. I'll give everybody just another full minute. Again, these classes are recorded, so if you need more time and you're watching the recording, just hit the pause button and just spend another 5 or 10 minutes. Like if you have the time, just do that for yourself. It's not a big deal. And you can come back and play catch up with me here. But I want to make sure we have some time for the bottom set of clouds that we're doing. We have some transitional blending to do with the bottom of these clouds, and then we have the sun and the sun rays. So that will take us to about an hour and a half, roughly. So that'll be perfect for our class tonight. So whenever you're done using your brushes, you always just want to clean your brushes off. And we are going to be using the same small detailed brush for the tops of these clouds. But we're gonna make like a bluish purple color first for these clouds. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want this color to be. It's gonna be bluish gray. I don't know. We're gonna make a purple. So I already made a purple up here, but I'm gonna have it be a little more blue. So I want you to make a purple if you don't have a purple already. But we want it to be like a bluish purple color, but we're going to add some white to it. So I want you to kind of come up with like a bluish gray color, and the purple might help you kind of with a little bit of that offset tone. We're going to bring a little bit of white in, but the purple, having a little purple with the blue, if you don't want to make purple first, you can always just bring in a little bit of red, and that will kind of give your blue tone like a purple sway, which is good. So maybe just take your blue, add a little bit of red to it, and then bring in some white. And we're kind of going for this like bluish gray color. It's really quite pretty. So take a minute to mix and find this color that you like. It's kind of like a dark periwinkle, perhaps. It's not too dark. A darker periwinkle. It's not a bright periwinkle. And this is where, in these next steps, I'll talk us through it first. We're going to do some really deliberate, kind of fluffy cloud-like structure. And we're going to do kind of one ridge line. And it's going to be right on top of this red line. So I want you, as you're painting, to pay attention to the bristles and the very end of the brush. I'm going to look at the very end of this brush the entire time. Now, if this brush does not have a good enough point for me, I'm going to change brushes. So I'm intentionally talking about that. So you could consider the same thing. Now, start either from the left or the right. I'm a lefty, so I should probably start on the right, so my hand doesn't run through the paint as I go to the right. So I'm going to start on the right, but if you're a righty, start on the left and kind of do what I'm doing. But we're going to create some cumulus clouds here. I am going to paint, I'm going to start painting right on top of this line. And we're just going to kind of create some really fluffy clouds. So I want the orange, the darker orange, to be hidden on this line. I want this lighter orange to come through. So you can see here, I'm just kind of creating a little bit, and this is, I'm going to fill it in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'll zoom it down a little bit too. You're creating a kind of a natural edge of clouds. So just like we did up here, this is going to go all the way off the edge. So this is the edge of the cloud. And we're doing this ridge line of the cloud. And you're going to come high and you're going to come low. But I want it to be natural. So try to break this up a little bit. Just focus on this ridge line. So this is kind of like a fluffy, thunderous cloud. It can be a little higher over here on the right or on the left, right? And we can kind of go up and down as we see fit here. You can see I'm trying to make this really natural looking from a cloud perspective. It just takes a little practice, a little bit of a loose hand. I'll do like a little bit of like a rough line so you can kind of see what we're doing here. But I'm just doing some dabbing. Try to add some texture. And this is what we're practicing tonight. What does like a natural cloud line, ridge line look like?
Across, Megan.
Huh?
Are we going all the way across?
You're going all the way across. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Exactly. You're going to go all the way across. You can do some higher points and some lower points. And you can change this. This is just a starting place. So if I come over here, I can do some like big, like more thunderous kind of heads. Again, higher on the left, higher on the right. Yeah. And this is like not perfect, but I'm showing you what it's like to be a little more rigid, just for like more of a natural cloud. Like if you want this to be a little more rounded in areas, feel free. And we're just going to slowly just start to bring the color down, just a little bit at a time. We're not going to bring this down 2 inches in this blue color because we're going to do some blending. See, I'm being really contained about how I'm filling this in. These big parts we're going to fill in more, right? Because they're higher. And I can come in and fix this. Some of this does not look like a cloud, which is fine. I'll come in and fix it. But you can see I'm just slowing down just to see what happens. Okay. I'm filling this in a little bit here. Just going to start to bring this down. That cloud looks like a turtle, right? I just went back to my, my 8-year-old times of seeing animals and shapes in clouds. I have a turtle in one of my clouds. I should probably fix that. All right, let's just change this turtle up here. I don't need to have a turtle in my cloud. Unless you want a turtle, right? Whatever. Some of this looks like popcorn or just like a messy hairdo. So I can create some more rounded points, right? If it's a little too rigid, I can come in and fix that. It's no big deal. These are called adjustments, ladies and gentlemen, okay? But we don't do this that often, so it's kind of fun to try doing something a little bit different. Okay. So I'm just going to slowly work my way across, filling in just a little bit at a time. And you can see I'm not really making like a total straight line down here. I'm just trying to be consistent about filling in the color. And we're going to do some blending down into this orange with this blue color. Or you can leave it straight across. Like if you like the straight across, that's fine. I'm going to do some transitional blending. And it may be bringing the orange up into the blue. It may be bringing the blue down into the orange. It may be a combination of both, right? These are two very different colors. So there's a lot of ways that we could do this transition, right? So maybe we just take a little bit of water on our brush and we just start to soften the blue just a little bit. Bringing it slowly. We don't want to bring a lot of the blue down. We don't want to come down 3 inches. I want you to try to stay within less than 3 inches. But you can see I'm just slowly bringing this down. Well, because we can always bring more orange in, so it's no big deal. But just slowly start to transition this down. Because we're going to bring in orange. And you can see mine is wet, right? You can see the reflection. It will dry. And I'll zoom this back out so you can see the whole composition. With a little water, I'm just going to slowly bring the blue down because we are going to bring the orange up and the orange is going to be like fluffy on top. So I'm going to use my finger. You don't have to use your finger if you don't want to. But the orange is, we're gonna kind of pad some orange in on top once this blue is dry. And that's gonna really help. We're transitioning the blue down. And then we're gonna bring the orange back on top, which will be really fun. So you can determine how far you want this blue to come down. It's totally up to you. Play with this. The farther you bring the blue down, the more orange you're gonna have to use to cover some of it up. Mm. But we want the blue to dry before we bring the orange up. So you can see I've transitioned it down a little bit. And I'm just gonna make some of that orange again. So I ran out. You wanna make sure your brush is really clean as you transition from the orange to the blue, because if there's any blue on your brush, you're gonna have brown in your orange paint. That'd be really bad. So I'm just gonna be polite here and take a minute to thoroughly ensure the blue is off my brush. And I'm going to try to make this color again. And then I'm going to slowly bring this orange up and in. Again, and I can use my finger to transition it up. And it can kind of come up into the blue space a little bit. My blue is not quite dry yet, so I needed to wait a minute. So make sure your blue is dry. Don't do what I did. I'm just smudging this back in politely. So make sure the blue is dry that you brought down first. And this transitional area, I want it to be 100% dry. So maybe take a minute to mix more of that orange paint if you need to. This blood orange, because we're going to want to apply this pretty thick in a coat. You can use a bigger brush if you want to upsize. Let's see, this is like a half, this is like a little bit bigger. But I'm just going to make some more of this orange over here while this is drying. And we know how acrylic works, right? So if everybody's using acrylic, whenever you use orange on top of another color, it sometimes takes a couple coats. So it's just having a little patience with the process. One, it's about having the color. And if it's not exactly the same color, it's okay. You can kind of transition it and blend it in. It's more of like a reddish orange versus like a yellowish orange. So it's kind of just transitioning this up and in. And you can start in one area and you can use your finger. A little tricky. You could use water if you wanted to try that. I'm just going to do like a circular smudging technique here to kind of help tuck it into the clouds. For me, that's going to work a little bit. So I'm just doing a little bit of paint, maybe some circular smudging. Play with different techniques to transition, bringing in this orange and this blue together. And it's kind of creating some fun contrast, which is really interesting. I don't hate it. So I'm just doing some brush strokes, some dabs, and I'm just doing some circular smudges. The more paint and layers we add on here, the more the orange will stand out. So I bet you if we did two coats of this technique, we'd have some really solid blood orange coming on top of these clouds. If you wanted to use your brush for dabbing techniques like this, I'm using my finger and doing circular smudging. That's just a personal preference. Do what works for you. We'll come in and soften. If this is too dark for anybody, we can come in and soften that with a lighter orange, so no big deal. There. But this is just one, being playful, two, experimenting, and having a little patience, because this whole area we're doing with the second coat is going to look totally different and very cool. Very, very cool. And I'll show you what that looks like. I can already see it. And you can play with how you, it's kind of created like a second transitional layer of clouds. So I'm just doing, and I'm showing you a little bit of this on the left. And we will make this, so there's a lot of brightness going on. We will add some more brightness to this. We're going to add we're going to add the sun and the flare in a few, but play with this transitional blending here. There's a lot of cool stuff happening. I'm going to just do a little bit more of this. I'm going to brighten it up in just a minute. If anybody's like, this is getting so dark, it's just how the orange is overlaying the blue. I'm going to brighten this intentionally in just a minute. We don't want it to be too bright, but a little bit of extra brightness would be good. And the extra brightness we're going to add is, I'm just going to add some regular orange on top of it. So you can see it's super funky. I'm going to take some of this blood orange and I'm going to make it into a little bit more brighter orange. Again, this is experimental. If you follow your own intuition here, you may be using different colors than I am, so don't worry. But I'm just using a little bit of like a lighter orange here just to do, and maybe it's not, maybe I don't use my finger for this part. Maybe I just kind of come in, soften it with my brush. So sometimes it's fun to like force yourself to use the tools you have, whether you don't want to use your finger or not. I could force myself to just use my brush right now, which sometimes it's kind of fun to just see how that goes. Maybe I even add a little bit of white to this to see if it helps stand things out. So yeah, it does. The white's like really bright. I don't want the white, so I'm going to kind of paint over some of that. And for me, the brush strokes aren't working, so I'm just going to do a little bit of the circular smudging just to kind of blend this in personally. And I can bring it down a little bit. For me, I'm just brightening it up just a little bit. And these colors are going to blend. So if your colors are starting to blend a lot, just let it dry and just come back to it. It's no big deal. It's kind of giving me some kind of fun cloud-like layering. We're going to be painting a sun and beautiful sun rays on top of this, but I want you to be happy with this transition, whatever it is for you. For me, I don't want to steer away too much from this base color. So I'm really going to be intentional of like holding on to that as much as possible. So I'm coming in with this like blood orange again, and I'm just kind of smoothing this out just to really, again, back to blending one layer to another. See how I just transitioned that to kind of all just like work again? That's a really important part of today's class. So if you feel like you have like some mucky layers that are just losing their blend, I just reblended all of that. And it's kind of like working out again. So just don't hesitate. I want you to have a nice smooth transition from the blue down to the orange, this blood orange. So any way that you want to do that, feel free, whether it's using lighter colors or not. That's the part we're working on right now. And I want you to be happy with that. And maybe, we're all going to take our time here. I want you to be happy with the blue cloud transition too. So maybe I come back up here and I take a little bit of this blue and I kind of play with this blue transition up here with my red again, my orangish, and maybe I just do a little bit of some soft transitional brush strokes maybe bringing the blue down just a little bit, right? So this is where you can make choices of where you want to where you're personally satisfied with some of this work. Want you to be happy with your blue cloud ridgeline at the top. Grab a smaller brush. I might do some more detailed work with the blue cloud ridgeline just to get it ever so. So use your eye. You're gonna know like when you're happy with certain areas, just let it be. If anyone needs help, again, feel free to drop any questions or comments in the YouTube video or in Patreon. And Sharon, if you have any questions for the live class, definitely don't hesitate to ask. But the experience of kind of just playing with these clouds, we don't always get to do this. So it's kind of fun to slow down and see what happens here with our funky clouds for tonight. Some of our clouds just might be getting a little bigger and bigger. That's okay. You can be really fancy and layer some like lighter clouds in behind these. I'm not going to go that crazy tonight, but if anyone wants to try like a little bit of a level 2 tip, you could add a little dimension to these clouds. So if you wanted to mix a little bit of that bluish purple with like a little bit of the light blue, you could put a little tiny bit of like lighter color on the top side of these clouds. Again, with a little water maybe. So like a little bit, that's a lot, but you can see I wanted to add any lightness. I'm just gonna use my finger to smudge it. Can add a little bit and smudge it in quickly because acrylic dries fast. See, I added a little bit of lightness to some of those clouds. Optional, you don't need to do that. A little bit of a level 2. Maybe on the inside, and this is really on the top ridge line, just doing a little bit of a drawing outline, and then I'm just smudging it with my finger ever so. And there's water on my brush too, so just kind of highlighting where some of these top sides are. And the smudging kind of helps blend it in with your finger. So you can see the lightness that created on those clouds just a little bit if you wanted to consider that. Okay. So for me, I have it's a little dark right here. So I'm going to get a little bit more of this orange and bring it in. But take the next few minutes just to really refine these clouds. We have plenty of time left for our class. The only final steps that we have left are doing the sunbeams on top. So any additional details that you wanted to incorporate, feel free to do that at this time, whether it's playing with the clouds, any of the clouds. The transition of colors. I'm certainly excited to see how everybody's doing. If you wanted to add any, there's one additional spot, we can add a little additional brightness for our rising sun, our setting sun. Down here in the middle, we can have like a little bit of like an orange and yellow glow. So if you wanted to make like an orangey yellow, You could create a little bit of a blended bright spot right down here at the bottom, it's like in the middle at the bottom. This is another way to practice some of your blending techniques. So I'm doing kind of a hot spot first, as you can see. And then I can kind of do some watery brush strokes out. So I'm kind of creating a brighter hot spot down here. You can always dip like the corner of a paper towel into your water cup, and that helps with using your paper towel as a blending tool. So I kind of wipe some of it off, but you can see kind of what it does. So you can have it be as subtle. And you could just do some light brush strokes, like gentle sweeps to the left and like just let it go kind of situation, like nice and soft. That actually works well with a little bit of water, just doing some soft. And you can do some gentle, soft with your hand. That will help blend it upwards. Really, really, really soft. Water, a little bit of the orange. So play with this soft, gentle. It's kind of like you're sweeping the floor just really softly. It's creating just a little bit of brightness here. Do a little bit more. I'm just gonna do yellow on top just to have a little bit of extra brightness for our transition. Sweeping over to the right, gentle, gentle, gentle. This takes practice and a little bit of patience. But in about 2 minutes, we'll do the sun and the sun rays just to be mindful of everybody's time. And for our sun rays, we may, you could totally grab like a straight edge if you wanted to kind of follow the guidelines, like to do perfectly straight lines. If you don't want to grab a flat edge, a ruler, something, you don't have to. It will give you straight sun rays though, if you have something flat you can use. So I just created a little bit of brightness. You're not going to see a ton of this because we're going to have the sun rays and all that, but I'm going to let this dry. So I am happy with my sky. I'm happy with my clouds. So pretty, so different, really subtle, right? We were going for kind of like a simple scene tonight. I'll check in with my friend Sharon here. Sharon, how's it going over there?
Going okay. You can see my.
Oh, so pretty. Your colors are awesome. Very nice.
Not sure I like the purple clouds, but that's okay.
Yeah, I couldn't see them, but if you don't like them, you can always paint like a light blue over them. So it's
Okay.
totally up to you. Yep, absolutely. So I'll give everybody a couple minutes. To finish up the bottom area and let it dry. So we need the space to be dry, super important. You can see mine, where there's reflection, it's still wet. So I'm painting on acrylic paper tonight too, so it may dry differently than yours. And I was also using a bit of water. And I'm tempted to bring some more of the blue down. So tempted. Let's see here. Because I have some darker transitional areas, like bringing some of this blue just down a little bit more. So this is all about layering, right? With acrylic. I have some of the darker colors that kind of just happened. So don't ever feel rushed. With art, you can kind of take as much time as you need to finish a piece. And with acrylic, sometimes you need all these layers to dry, right? I really would like a little bit more of this blue. Sometimes you have to mix more colors, more of the color. Sometimes you need to let it dry a little bit. For me, I just needed a little bit more paint pigment to just really stand out on some of these clouds. I really wanted the blue clouds to be seen. For me, that was important. Maybe it's more important than the transition itself, right? So those are some of the choices that we make. So I'm going to let that dry. I just painted on that. But I love the way that the sky came out with a nice soft pastels. And then we have this moody scene that's going on, down here below, which is quite fun. Maybe take a step back and just reflect. Is there anything else you wanted to do or change or modify? Because these sun rays are going to go on top of everything. And you can't really make too many changes after these sun rays. You can do some, but not too many. So it's kind of just being conscious of when you do these sun rays on top. Maybe finding a flat edge or ruler in your home. The dollar store, you can buy like 4 rulers for $1, 2 rulers for $1. They're tremendous to have in your house. But I'm going to stop painting. I like that I added a little more blue. For me, that's what I wanted. We're going to let our paintings dry. Karen's waving hers around. I should probably do the same. We should invest in those mini fans, Sharon, near our art studios. So just like to hold the fan on it. I don't typically run hot, so that doesn't work. My sister, runs hot most days. I'm like, I run cold typically, so I'm not one to have a fan, right nearby. Which is funny because some of you probably run hot, right? And some of you probably run cold. So if you have a fan, feel free to grab that. But we'll give our paintings a minute to dry. We're doing great for time. One thing we can do is while everything is drying, we can come down here to the bottom and we can draw our little half sun, which is like a light yellow color, which is really fun. So find a small brush of choice. And I'm going to mix like a light yellow first. So white and a little bit of yellow. We want this to be fairly bright in color. You could have it just be plain, like regular white. That'd be totally fine. So let's see. It could be orangey, it could be just white. And it's fairly small. You can decide. For me, it's like kind of the size of my thumb. You basically want to find the bottom of the painting, and it's going to be like a half circle basically, but you want the sun to be floating. So you don't want it to be directly at the bottom. So find the middle maybe with your finger first. And then do a little half circle. It's kind of like confidence at this point. You want to have some orange below it, basically. So let it dry. So not bad. It's not perfect, but we can continue to kind of fix it. We know what it's like fixing objects. It just continues to change. So just find a point where you're satisfied. For me, I was just making mine a little taller, rounder in height. Okay, not bad. Nice and calming. Take a deep breath. Let it dry, right? Don't touch it. It's not perfect yet, but sometimes it's like getting the right amount of paint on the brush for your one little edge to come up just enough to be satisfied. So this is letting all of everything else dry. So if it's starting to get sticky, stop painting it, let it dry. So that's probably fine for me. And then we're going to wait for all this to dry. This little thing's going to dry. All the blue, orange and stuff in here is going to dry. And then we're going to do our streaks. Now, I'm going to show you what some test streaks look like. Let me grab a test sheet and I'll do some practice with you. So you can see what a little trial and error looks like. So I'm going to grab one of my old paintings. Oh, how perfect. You all are going to love this. So look at this. We're going to Christmas in Hawaii here, okay? I'm going to move this one and let it dry. And we're going to do some practice brush strokes. I'm going to do some practice brush strokes for you on this moon, on this rising sun or moon. We're going to pretend like it's a sun. Okay. And I'm going to show you how light our brush strokes are going to be. I'm going to do, I'll just pick one of these brushes here. I'll just use this size brush. We're going to use a smaller brush for ours. So we're going to use a watery yellow, like water wash. So I'm doing yellow and white. You can have it be as bright yellow or as soft yellow as you wish. The trick is you got to have water on here. So a milk-like consistency. And you're literally in the inspiration, it's narrow and then it gets bigger. So maybe we'll do some we'll turn the brush on the side, right? And we'll go straight up. And then you can either use your finger to smudge, right? So you can see what that does. The finger smudging effect. Like that's not bad, right? It's fairly light. So it's the finger smudging effect. It's kind of just going on it. Not too bad as a technique. You can we'll do the paper towel smudge next. So there's one watery brush stroke. You could leave it just as that, like a watery brush stroke. I'll do another one that I'll do a paper towel smudge. That just wiped it off. Let's try it again. Lots of different ways to do this. Let's do a corner of a paper towel, wet. Soft smudging. So corner of a paper towel, it's a little lighter. So far, I think the brush stroke, and you could just do a little bit at a time. It may work doing a brush stroke and then a finger smudge to kind of like, you want it to be really straight. So you can do some smudging. So you can play with it, right? If your items are dry, you can try it. I think doing a single brush stroke first works well. I'm not using a flat edge, so you can see I'm just being really conscious. And you're going to do a couple coats of this. So you're going to decide how many of these coats you want based on how bright you want your sunburst to be. So I'm just doing some test examples just to show you. This is a watery. This is just a brush. Let me add a little more white to show you what a little more white looks like. Oops. So that's a little more white versus yellow. You can use your finger to smudge. So you can see how much brighter the white stands out on the background compared to just yellow or a yellowy white. So maybe we do a combination of both, right? Depends on if you want it to be more yellowy or if you want it to have a little bit more of a brighter contrast. The one in the middle up here, you can see that's more yellow. So it's kind of good to see. It's like a disco ball in the sky, Sharon. So I'm doing a brush stroke and then a finger smudge. So, and I'm doing multiple kind of coats. So you can pick and choose on how much white or how much yellow you want for these sunrays. Okay, the yellow is really subtle, like white and yellow is very subtle. So I hope that was some good examples for y'all to see. Let's check and see how dry this is. Not too bad. Pretty close. Picking the brush is probably important as well. The width of the brush will help determine the width of your sun rays. So I'm just going to be bold. I'm going to start with just the yellowy white here. And I'm going to do, this brush is actually terrible. Let me see if I have another one. This one's better. It's kind of a smaller, it's a number 4 if you've ever gotten brushes from me before. It's like a 4 flat tip brush. So I have a little bit of this, a little bit of white. Bring a couple dollops of water in to create that water wash. The more water you add, the more diluted the pigments will be, which is not a bad thing in this case. And then what you're going to do is you're going to slowly transition off. So you don't need to bring the sun rays all the way up to these upper clouds. You can do it to like just below them. So I'm just going to be brave. I'm going to use the edge of this brush so it's more thin. I'm not going to use a ruler. I'm just going to be brave. And I'm going to do a finger smudge right up the middle. And this is just art, so it's okay. I might put a little water on my brush, ladies and gents. I just kind of soften it. Just do some watery brush strokes up. You can soften it with a little water. Okay. And I'm just gonna add a few more of these. Now, if this is too much sun rays coming up on the top, I can take a wet cloth and kind of dab some of this. I'm gonna still see some of it, but you can kind of, I don't want to say you can erase some of it, but you can kind of gently pat some of it down if you need to. It's just a little trial and error. The white is really helpful. I'm just gonna just be bold and confident and just do some more. So I'm just gonna come down here. I'm gonna go off the bottom of the page. I'm just gonna be bold and just go for it. And I'm just gonna use my finger and smudge, finger and smudge, finger and smudge. Maybe a little water on my brush. Just use my brush to help soften the rays. So the water on the brush will help soften the edges of the rays. So that's helping me quite a bit. A little water, softening the edges of the rays. Okay, some of these might like turn into like a double ray. You can have some of these kind of filter out to be a double ray. I got a little bit of blue on this one, so I'm just gonna clean off my brush, make sure there's no blue on it. And I'm just gonna go back to my white and my yellow mixture here. See that? And it kind of got broken up a little bit and I don't hate it. So it's okay to kind of just, with a soft hand, using a narrow side of the brush. And we're gonna let it dry, right? And we're gonna see what it looks like when it's not wet, because we're gonna probably want to add another coat. So just use your intuition here. I'm doing nice soft brush strokes. You can have your sun be kind of broken up a little bit. If it looks different than mine, that's totally fine. I'm doing a lot more little ones. It's just what's happening here. Compared to the inspiration. You can do just bigger ones, like the inspiration, like thicker sunbeams, that's fine. Just not what happened on mine. And I may come in with a little bit of like more yellowy water. And just to kind of add a little bit of like yellowy brightness as a second coat to some of these. So kind of follow your own intuition here around what you want to do and why. My initials were like very like light, like whitish. And I'm coming back in with like a second coat with some yellow to make it a little brighter. But this is where art is just going to happen. So I was planning on doing big ones and it just didn't work out like that. I could merge some of these, but you can see I'm brightening some of these, which is great. So I had my first coat kind of came out like on the whiter side, which is fine, but I'm coming in with just a little bit of yellow now, yellow and water. Well, like it's like a light yellow water. And you can choose if that's what you want to do or not. Mhm. It reminds me of like Arizona or something, like very Tuscan colors. Sharon, how's this going for you? You probably have big sun rays. That's my guess for you. You probably have big ones.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I got so dainty with my lines. I'm like, all right, whatever. Yep, it's okay. And I could easily turn some of these into bigger ones, like and merge some of these together. I could be daring and just do it. All right, maybe I'll just do it, Sharon. Let's just see how this goes. I love a little experimentation here. So I'm just going to merge some of these so they're a little bigger. And I'll do this one. So I'm kind of just connecting the colors in between some of my smaller lines. Maybe that's what had in my head all along. I'll just connect these. It's fine. I can say that was my plan the whole time, Sharon.
There you go.
I'm just using a light yellow. See, totally doable. Let's see here. These can definitely be connected right here. So a little bit of yellow. My white is like really almost diluted. I almost have blue near it. It's like you don't want to touch the white with the blue because that'd be real bad. Blue and yellow give you green, and you do not want that, my friends. Not at this stage in the game. So make sure your brush is nowhere near greens. So I'm gonna blend that. Again, a corner of a wet paper towel can help you as an eraser per se. So if you do something you don't like, just come in and wipe it off really quick with a wet paper towel. Totally doable. And the more layers you add on here, which is what you're all experimenting with right now, the bolder these lines will get. So you can keep them soft and subtle if you wish, these sun rays, or you can keep them, you can kind of continue to add to them for them to be bolder. So your choice. I got a little of this and a little of that going on. It's kind of fun. But you can see that if you look at the inspiration, there is some substance to these rays. So there is some solid paint pigment here and there. So if you're interested in that, it's just doing more and more layering for you to get that pigment to hold. So I'm on like the third layer for some of these, and I'm just kind of layering it on until I'm happy with the pigment coverage, right, for that sun ray. And you may not know until it like looks or feels right for you. That's totally fine. It may be the right it may be the right like darkness, but it may not be the right color, right? You may want it to be a little more yellowy, or you may want it to be a little more orangey. So that's where you can kind of play with changing the color of the brush stroke as you layer. So for me, I was going back and forth between the yellows and the lighter colors. But you just do you here. You want to create some consistency. So for me, I'm doing some bolder sun rays. I want there to be like a good balance of those bolder sun rays throughout my picture. So for me, I'm just going to kind of go back through and just make sure I have that consistency, because I do want this sun to stand out, which it is, certainly is. And I might put a little yellow in my sun down here to give it a little bit of a color boost. So you can consider that if you wish. A little bit of yellow, or you can keep it nice and bright and white. That's fine too. And you can really kind of make this as artsy as you wish. So Sharon, I'm inspired to grab one of those skinny brushes of mine. Let's see here. And you could do some outlining on your sun rays. So if you really want to do something different and make these sun rays stand out, you can grab a brush with a long tip on it. Watch this. This is experimentation at its best. So a little bit of some yellow and some white paint, and not a ton of water. I could go along the edge. Of these sun rays and just do a gentle outline. Now you don't have to do this. I'm just being very experimental and just showing you of an option. This is a brush with some long bristles on it. For me, I'm just highlighting. Since these sun rays are so important to me, I'm just outlining some of them to make them stand out just a little bit more. So like, as an example, that is something you like. You can use a long skinny brush to just do a little bit of accent, like detail. Just using doing it with a long straight hand is recommended. That sun ray got a little crooked, but you get where we're going here. I can fix it a little bit here. Okay. So for me, a little bit of this outlining gave my sun rays a little bit more structure. I can still see and appreciate everything I've done in the background. You know, there's the glowing sun ray, which is using the opacity, and then there's the structured piece. So it's totally up to you on how structured or not that you want to have something. Most importantly, I hope everybody enjoyed tonight's class. It's always fun to try something new and just to kind of think outside the box. So I hope that everyone enjoyed spending a little bit more time on clouds, a little bit more time on blending. And if there's any questions, please let me know. But I want to thank you for joining. And I would love to see your work, Sharon. I'm just highlighting the tops of some of these clouds in the distance with a little bit more lighter blue. I have this tiny brush in my hand, so I'm just being playful, really. Oh, so pretty. So I'm gonna pause the recording. Give me just one moment. Thank you everyone for joining the class tonight. If you have any questions, please let me know.